Growing up in a house where every fridge magnet was from a college campus, I was the black sheep the moment I said I wasn't applying to any of them. "You'll end up flipping burgers," my dad scoffed, tossing the brochure for trade school into the trash. My mom was subtler. She just stopped bringing me up at dinner parties. My siblings? All college-bound. My brother Ryan got a full ride to a private university. My sister, Emma, was the drama club darling, off to some East Coast liberal arts college that charged more than my yearly income at 17. I didn't care about that. What I cared about was the old shed behind our house. The one I fixed when I was 14, floor to roof. The first time I ever smelled sawdust and realized, I liked this. I liked making things that worked. I liked using my hands. And I liked not sitting in classrooms being told I had untapped potential, when all I wanted was a socket wrench and some peace. So when high school ended, I took my savings and bought a rusted-out van slapped "Alex Fix-It-All" on the side, and started offering handyman services around town. The reaction from my family? Let's just say they didn't throw me a graduation party. Why would anyone choose to be poor? Emma had whispered to Ryan once, thinking I couldn't hear. "He's like, willingly average." Dad made it clear I was on my own. No loans. No help. Not even a spare socket set when I asked? And holidays? Let's just say if you weren't a college grad or a future CEO, you got to sit at the kiddie table, even at 22. But you know what's funny about starting from the bottom? You learn fast. You hustle harder. And most of all, you remember everything. By year 2, I had steady clients. By year 3, I had 3 guys working under me. And by year 5, I was making more than my brother, whose startup dreams had already crashed twice. Emma? She was on her 3rd waitressing job between callbacks. And me? I had built something real. But still, the family never asked. Never acknowledged it. In their eyes, I was still the disappointment. The one who didn't go to college. The one who showed up to family dinner with calloused hands and dirt on his boots. That is, until the house started falling apart. Funny how respect shows up when your pipes burst and your ceilings sag. It started with a text from my mom. "Hey honey, do you still do repairs? The kitchen sink's been leaking for weeks. Thought we'd ask our favorite handyman." The audacity made me laugh so hard, I nearly dropped my wrench. Favorite handyman? They didn't even RSVP to my engagement party. But I played along. Replied with a smiley face. And then I did what no one in my family ever did for me. I gave them a quote. Double the standard rate. The quote I sent my parents was clean, professional, and painfully accurate. I itemized everything from demolition and cleanup to tile, drywall, plumbing, and labor hours, but I didn't stop there. I doubled it. Every line. Not because I was greedy, but because I knew them. If I quoted the real costs, they'd act like I was charging them out of spite. If I gave them a discount, they'd take it as their right. So I made it painfully obvious. If you want the help of the son you shunned for years, you're going to pay for it, and then some. It didn't take long for my mom to reply. She sent one of her signature passive-aggressive texts. "Hi sweetie, I think there's a mistake on the estimate. These numbers seem really high. Did you maybe use the wrong template?" "No. I used the right one. The very right one," I replied. "No mistake. That's my family rate." She didn't respond. 2 hours later, my dad called. That was already a red flag. He hadn't called me directly in months. Not even when my dog died. Not when I bought my first house. Not even when I got married last year. But now that his backsplash was falling apart, and he couldn't flex for his golf buddies, suddenly I was worth dialing. "Alex," he barked, like we were still in the same old house and I was still 15, late for curfew. "This quote, is this some kind of joke?" "Nope," I said. "That's what it costs." He paused, probably grinding his teeth. "You're telling me this number, is what you expect us to pay? Your own parents? I'm telling you what the work is worth." You can't be serious, he muttered. We're family. There it was. That old, dusty card he only pulled out when it suited him. I was family when they needed something. I was a stranger the rest of the time. I remember being family, I said. I also remember you telling everyone at Ryan's graduation that some people take different paths while staring directly at me like I was roadkill. That's not fair, he snapped. No, I said. It's accurate. He started in on the old hits. We supported you your whole life. Fed you. Clothed you. And now you think it's okay to charge your own parents like we're just some strangers off the street? You didn't support me. I cut in. You tolerated me. There's a difference. Another pause. Then, quieter. You'd really make us pay full price? No, I said. You're paying double. Click. He hung up. 3 days passed. Silence. No texts, no calls. I figured they'd stew in it, maybe try to guilt-trip me through my sister Emma. And of course, that's exactly what happened. On the 4th day, she called me. Voice all soft and rehearsed. Alex, she sighed. Why are you doing this to them? To them? I repeated. She launched into her usual performance. They're getting older. They just want to live in a house that doesn't feel like it's falling apart. And you, out of all people, you're the one making it harder. Emma, I said calmly. I didn't make anything harder. They could have hired anyone. They came to me. And when they did, I gave them a rate. Yeah, an insane rate. I raised an eyebrow. You mean a professional one? For the guy who built his business from the ground up while you were in college pretending to be an actress and crying over student loan emails? Silence. I wasn't done. You know what the real problem is? You all got so used to thinking of me as the family failure that you forgot I ever succeeded. She didn't like that. Not one bit. You're doing this out of spite, she hissed. No, I said. I'm doing it out of principle. I don't work for free. Not anymore. She hung up. 2 more days went by. I got a message from my cousin Mark, the only one in the family who ever treated me like I had value. He'd seen my work. I'd helped him with his garage 2 years ago, and he'd referred me to half his neighborhood. His message was simple. Heard about the quote. They're saying you lost your mind. I think you finally found it. That one made me smile. Not because I needed validation, but because I knew what was coming. The moment the rest of the family found out I stood up to my parents, I'd either be burned at the stake or quietly envied. I was fine with either. That Friday, I got an email from my dad. Cold, formal, full of clipped language and strategic guilt. We appreciate your response and professionalism. Unfortunately, we'll be seeking services elsewhere. We had hoped for a different kind of interaction with our son. Different kind? What did he expect? That I'd show up with a hammer and a hug and say, "No charge, Dad. This one's on me." Like we were in a Lifetime movie? No. That man watched me bust my ass for years and never once asked how I was doing. He ignored my wins, minimized my progress, and now that I had leverage, he expected me to forget it all? Let him hire someone else. Spoiler, he did. And that's when things got interesting. I didn't lose sleep when my dad said they were hiring someone else. I figured they'd find a cut-rate contractor who slapped a sticker over every problem and called it done. And I was right. 3 weeks later, I got a message from Emma. You're not gonna believe this. Mom is livid. Apparently, they'd hired some guy named Rick who ran a home improvement company out of a shared mailbox and a Facebook page. Rick's quote had been half of mine. He said he could finish the entire kitchen in 3 weeks. It took him 4 to tear it apart. Emma's message continued. Half the cabinets are cracked. There's a leak under the new sink. Mom says it smells like wet paint and mildew. I didn't respond. They wanted a deal, they got one. They wanted to save money, and now the only thing they were saving was receipts for the refund they'd never get. By week 5, I started getting calls again. First Emma. Then my mom. Then my dad. I didn't pick up. Instead, I forwarded the voicemails to my office assistant. She transcribed them into a folder titled Regret Folder. We both had a good laugh. Then came the real kicker. A formal letter, emailed and mailed, printed, signed, and everything, from my father. Suddenly it was all very polite and diplomatic. Dear Alex, after careful consideration, your mother and I would like to revisit the option of contracting you for the renovation. We understand your time is valuable, and we're prepared to meet your quoted rate. We trust your expertise and professionalism will help us bring our home back to the standard we had hoped for. There it was. No apology. No ownership. Just a desperate pivot with a sugar coating of fake respect. I read it 3 times. Then I replied with a one-liner. My quote has gone up 15% due to increased demand. Let me know if you'd still like to proceed. The silence after that was beautiful. A week passed. No response. Then one morning I was out on a job, replacing rotted joists in an old craftsman bungalow, when I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Turned out to be my mother. Her voice was tight, but this time soft. Like someone trying to put together a broken plate using nothing but apologies and duct tape. Alex, we've been thinking. Your father and I, well, maybe we didn't treat you the way we should have. Maybe we were hard on you. We didn't realize how successful you'd become. Or how hard you worked. And we're sorry. Really. She paused. Then she said it. We'd like to move forward with the renovation. At whatever cost you feel is fair. I didn't respond that day. Or the next. I let it marinate. Let them stew. Let them feel, for once, what it was like to want something, need something, and have the door gently but firmly held shut. And during that silence, I thought about all those family dinners where I was invisible. The holidays where I brought gifts and left with nothing but cold leftovers and lukewarm hugs. The birthdays they forgot. The times they'd said, well, not everyone's cut out for success, while staring directly at me. Now I was the success. And they were the ones asking for help. So I made a decision. I called them back. I'll do it, I said. But everything goes through my office. You'll get a new quote. Signed contract. Payment schedule. There will be no family exceptions. No surprise favors. I'm your contractor. Not your son. Another pause. Then my father's voice, quiet. Understood. I sent over the new contract that afternoon. It was clean, tight, and more expensive. I included terms for late payments, added a project delay clause, and required a 50% deposit up front. Within 48 hours, I had the signed paperwork and a direct bank transfer. It felt surreal. Not because I finally won, but because I realized I didn't care anymore. I didn't need their approval. I didn't want their attention. I just wanted what I'd earned. And I was finally getting it. On my terms. The project started a week later. I showed up with my crew, clipboard in hand, not as the son who never amounted to much, but as the boss who ran a 6-figure business and had a waiting list out the door. The look on my father's face when I introduced my foreman as Mr. Saito, and not him, was priceless. But we weren't done yet. Day 1 of the renovation was all business. My crew showed up at 7:30 sharp, vans lined up like clockwork on the curb. My parents were waiting in the kitchen, wearing matching. We're trying to be polite. Smiles. You could practically smell the tension under the fresh brewed coffee they'd made just for us, an awkward attempt to prove they were gracious clients. I didn't drink it. Instead, I walked them through the scope of work like I would any other customer. No chit-chat. No hugs. Just logistics. This wall's coming down to open the space. We'll need to reroute the electrical. Cabinets here, backsplash here. Full tour-out starts this afternoon. Permits are filed, and we've got a dumpster coming at noon. They nodded like strangers. It was the most honest interaction we'd had in a decade. We started with the demo. Everything looked routine, until we got to the far wall behind the fridge. That's when one of my guys, Kenny, called me over. "Hey boss," he said, pulling back a soggy panel of drywall. "You might want to take a look at this." I crouched beside him, flashlight in hand. The wood was soft, discolored, with dark streaks running through it like bruises. Mold. Water damage. And not just from the busted pipe they mentioned. This was old. Long-term. The kind of problem that didn't happen overnight. I peeled back more drywall, and that's when I saw it. A second layer of material, a patch job. Someone had already tried to fix this. Poorly. There was evidence of amateur work behind the facade, mismatched nails, warped studs, even a few torn strips of masking tape used as some kind of makeshift insulation. And scrawled in black sharpet, behind the lowest beam, were the words, "Ryan's room, do not remove." I stared at it for a minute. "Boss?" Kenny asked. I didn't answer. I stood, turned, and walked into the living room where my father was reading the newspaper like he was still king of the castle. "What happened behind the kitchen wall?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. He looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" "There's rot back there. Mold. Someone did a patch job years ago. And there's writing. Says Ryan's room, do not remove. Wanna explain?" His expression twitched. A flicker of panic passed through his eyes before he masked it with a shrug. "That was from when Ryan flooded the upstairs bathroom. We had to fix it quickly. Didn't have the budget to do it right at the time. But I wasn't buying it. I'd seen enough botched cover-ups to know when something wasn't adding up. We need to tear it out," I said. "All of it. It's unsafe. If there's more structural damage, the whole floor could be compromised." My mother walked in, her voice laced with urgency. "Wait, can't you just fix around it? We don't want to lose the cabinets." I looked between them. Two people who would have let that rot fester forever, so long as the house looked fine on the surface. Just like they did with everything else in this family. "No," I said. "We do it right or we don't do it at all." They didn't argue. By the end of the day, half the kitchen was gone. We'd uncovered 3 separate water leaks, one from an old pipe that hadn't been up to code since the 1980s. Worse, the wiring was a disaster. It looked like Ryan, the golden boy, had done his own repairs years ago with a YouTube education and a roll of duct tape. I documented everything. Took photos. Filed a revised scope of work. Notified the city inspector, who stopped by 2 days later and immediately red-tagged part of the wall. "This could have gone up in flames," the inspector said, shaking his head. "You're lucky your son's crew found this." My father said nothing. My mother forced a smile. But something in their faces had changed. That invisible authority they used to wear like armor was cracking. And I wasn't done yet. That night, after locking up, I sat in my truck and opened an old email thread I hadn't looked at in years, back when I offered to help with home repairs for free, when I was just starting out and trying to earn their approval. The one where my dad replied, "Thanks, but we'll wait for someone qualified." I kept it. Just like I kept every receipt, every backhanded comment, every reminder that I wasn't enough in their eyes until I became useful. And now that they needed me, suddenly I was qualified? No. Now I was in charge. Tomorrow, the demo would continue. And so would the reckoning. Because sometimes, the only way to clean out a house full of rot is to rip the whole damn thing down to the studs. The next phase of the renovation moved into the living room, walls to open, support beams to reinforce. On paper, it was straightforward. But this wasn't just a house anymore. It was a monument to everything my family refused to talk about. On the second morning of tear-out, we found a hollow section in the living room wall. There were no utilities running through it, no structural reason for it to exist. Kenny tapped it, then called me over again. "False panel. Drywall's new, but everything around it's original." I gave him a nod, then took a crowbar and pulled the board free. Behind it was a shallow cubby stuffed with old binders, crumpled receipts, and a dusty manila envelope labeled Ryan Property. I stared at it. Back in the day, my father used to tell me I didn't think long term. Said I didn't understand what ownership meant. Meanwhile, here was a stash of Ryan's plans and files, tax forms, real estate documents, even a rough business plan for a property management company he'd once tried to start with borrowed money. I thumbed through the pages. There was a spreadsheet listing the house as collateral. I froze. That's when I heard a voice behind me. Put that back. My dad. He was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, face strained of all the fake civility he'd been wearing for the past week. You used this house? I asked. He didn't deny it. Just said, it didn't work out. You wouldn't understand. I stood up, my chest tight. You used the family home as leverage so Ryan could play businessman? And then buried the evidence in the wall? He had a vision, Dad muttered. We were trying to give him a chance. I shook my head, almost laughing. And what about me? I offered to fix this place 5 years ago. You told me to stay in my lane. That's because you wanted to do it for free. No, I corrected him. I wanted to do it right. He didn't respond. Just turned and walked off like I was the one being unreasonable. That night, I went back to my apartment and sat with that envelope for hours. I debated what to do, confront Ryan, expose it to the family, or just pretend I never found it. But in the end, I added it to a new file. Not for revenge. For record-keeping. For the truth. Because someday, this family might forget again. But I wouldn't. By the 3rd week of the renovation, the house was barely recognizable, stripped to the studs in places, ductwork exposed, drywall piles stacked on the porch. My team was efficient, quiet, professional. My parents? Less so. They stopped offering coffee. They stopped asking questions. Instead, they hovered, murmuring in hallways, watching every move like they were waiting for a trap to spring. There was an unspoken fear in them now, not about the renovation itself, but about me. They didn't know who they were dealing with anymore. Because the son who used to sit quietly in the corner, fixing cabinet doors for free, had grown into the man who sent invoices. With due dates. Which brings us to Friday. I was wrapping up measurements for custom shelving when my assistant Liz called. Hey, she said hesitantly. So your dad just emailed. He's requesting a deferment on the 2nd installment. Says they've run into some cash flow issues. I closed my eyes. I knew what this was. The slow pivot back to the old game, guilt. Delay. Emotional manipulation dressed as financial inconvenience. They signed a contract. I said. Enforce it. You sure? Positive. That evening, my dad cornered me in the driveway as I was packing up the van. This payment schedule, he said, all innocent-like. It's a little aggressive, don't you think? No, I replied. It's standard. He gave me the classic disappointed dad look, the same one he used when I told him I wasn't going to college. I just thought, maybe you could give us some flexibility. For family. I met his stare. I gave you flexibility for 2 decades. I said. You called it failure. He didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, the payment cleared. Something shifted after that. My mother stopped speaking to me entirely. Emma sent a short text that just read, "Hope this is worth it." Even Ryan, who hadn't shown his face once, sent a cryptic message. "Nice to see you finally figured out what a paycheck's worth." I didn't reply to any of them. Because they still didn't get it. This wasn't about money. It was about dignity. Respect. Rewriting the story they had stuck me in, where I was always the underachiever, the one who needed handouts, not the one capable of sending bills with late fees. So I kept going. We finished the living room framing that week. Insulation next. Cabinets ordered. And me? I was just getting started. By the time we hit the final stretch of the project, backsplash installed, floors sealed, crown molding cut to perfection, the house looked like something out of a home design magazine. And yet something felt hollow. I could tell my crew felt it too. We worked like ghosts in a museum, admired but unwelcome. The house gleamed, but the people inside it stayed brittle. My mother avoided eye contact entirely. My father hovered with his arms crossed, pretending to inspect baseboards but mostly watching me like I was an intruder in my own origin story. That Thursday, while double-checking the alignment on the custom cabinets, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and found Emma in the doorway. She didn't look angry. Just tired. "I came by to see how it's going," she said, scanning the room like she didn't know what to say next. "It's going fine," I said. She nodded, biting her lip. Then, "They're not sleeping well, you know." I didn't respond. She stepped inside and crossed her arms. "You've made your point, Alex." I set down my measuring tape. "What point is that?" "That you're successful. That you're in control now." I gave a humorless laugh. This was never about control. It's about fairness. Boundaries. Respect. Emma looked away, then down at her feet. "They don't know how to handle this version of you. You used to be easier." "Yeah," I said. "I used to be useful." She flinched. "You don't have to do this. You could finish the work, walk away, and just let it go." Let it go. The phrase echoed in my head. Let go of being ignored. Let go of years of backhanded comments. Let go of being the family footnote. Let go of the small, burning voice in my gut that used to ask, "Why am I never good enough?" I stepped toward her. "I'm not doing this to get even. I'm doing it so I never feel like that kid again." Emma didn't say anything after that. Just nodded and left. 2 days later we finished. Final walk-through. Client sign-off. Clean up. My crew packed up. The contract was fulfilled to the letter, down to the last polished screw. I handed my dad the keys and a final receipt. "It's done," I said. He took the papers, stared at them like they were written in another language, and muttered, "The house looks incredible." "Yeah," I said. "It does." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, but nothing came out. I turned and walked out. The front door clicked shut behind me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was walking away from a job well done. A month after the renovation ended, I got a card in the mail. Handwritten envelope, familiar cursive. It was from my mom. Inside was a generic thank you card with a short note. "The kitchen is beautiful. We hope one day you'll come by just to visit. Love, Mom and Dad." No apology. No acknowledgement of the past. Just a neutral truce stapled to a countertop I'd installed myself. I left it on my desk. Didn't answer. Didn't visit. Instead, I got back to work. Winter rolled in, and with it came momentum. I expanded my team. Bought a second truck. Landed 3 commercial contracts. The money was good, but the peace? Even better. One Friday afternoon, I was walking through a nearly finished home office project when Kenny, my lead guy, asked, "You ever think they get it now? Your folks?" I shrugged. "Maybe. But I'm not building for them anymore." That night, I went home and found the envelope still sitting on my desk. The card they sent. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was moved, but because it finally felt like what it was, a receipt. Not a thank you. Not an apology. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I had delivered something they couldn't deny. They didn't have to say sorry. Their silence was loud enough. A week later, I got a call from Ryan. "Hey man," he started, trying to sound casual. "Heard the kitchen looks great. Emma says you went all out." "Just did the job," I said. He cleared his throat. "So, my basement's been flooding. I think it's a foundation issue. You think you could?" "No." He blinked on the other end. "No? I'm booked out 6 months. Even if I wasn't, I wouldn't take it." "Come on, man. You're seriously holding a grudge?" "No," I said. "I'm holding a boundary." He didn't call back. Somewhere along the line, I realized I wasn't fixing homes anymore. I was rebuilding myself. Every stud I installed, every beam I reinforced, it was a reminder that I wasn't a disgrace. I was a builder. Of homes. Of businesses. Of my own future. And as for my family? They're still in that house. The one they treated like a symbol of status until it literally started rotting from within. The house I fixed. The house I rebuilt. The house that will never fully feel like mine, but will always carry my fingerprints behind every wall and beneath every floorboard. Sometimes, revenge is a screaming match and slammed doors. Other times, it's quiet. It's charging double. It's leaving the final invoice paid in full. And walking away. Tools in hand. Head held high.